Okay, so this is just a general demo for sculpting the portrait. What you're gonna see here is, this is actually my setup. It's black pipe right here with some 1/4 inch aluminum wire. As you can see, there's one loop here going down. Then there's another loop going in this direction down. And then I've got 16th inch aluminum wire that has been made into a kind of friendly barbed wire, not barbed, but looped, okay? And I've looped it around here. Now you don't necessarily have to have this but I like this because it grips the clay, okay? If you don't have this set up, that's fine too. This is just kind of like a deluxe version. Here I have a wooden cross, which I'm going to use to wrap. I'm actually going to shorten this right now. So what this is doing is that it's going to help hold up some material so that the front part of her face won't fall forward. So this is just, it's called a butterfly key. This is a simplified version of a butterfly key. So Mia, I'd like you to just turn your head this way so people can see. Oops, sorry. All right, that this butterfly key is meant to fill this area right here. Sometimes it can get kind of heavy, okay? Actually, could you rotate your shoulders this way to your left? Yeah. Okay, so there you can kind of see a little bit better, okay? All right, so we're gonna face forward. All right, I'm gonna rotate this. Okay, now just to remind you, you want the front plane of your model to be parallel with your eyes, as well as the front plane of your sculpture base is going to be parallel to your eyes. So you see how I've rotated this so that when I stand here, I'll be able to see, look this way, like pretend this is the plane of my eyes, look at my sculpture this way. Then when I turn my head this way, parallel with the front plane of the model. Okay, so it's going to be like this, really. All right, literally like that, and then that. Okay, so I'm going to rotate everything so that I can see it properly, and then every once in a while I'll show you guys what's going on. So Mia, please turn this way, right? So her face is parallel to mine, and now my eyes are parallel to this. And when I sculpt, it's all going to be thinking about the head, the portrait head, inside this kind of box, right? That's why we get the pure front, pure sides, and then the pure back of the model. All right, so I'm going to start by putting some slabs of clay onto this. You see, I've got a bunch of small tools here. Sorry, just kind of forgetting to remind you of these things. So when I start, I like to have my tools soaking in a cup of water. That helps me make sure that my tools are nice and clean. When it comes to larger work, I like to have larger forms. I like to have bigger tools, okay? These are different kinds of things. I've actually made a tool like this out of a wooden coat hanger. So that's a really easy thing that you can do. You're also going to check to see the level of your base. So I'm going to use this tile wedge here to level this out. Okay, and then we're all set. Now I'm going to start adding the clay onto the sculpture. Okay, so I just want to show you real quick. I've got a clay cutter here. It's got two wooden handles at the end. There's a piece of wire, all right? So I'm going to cut the clay in slabs. And you're going to see how easy it is to start a portrait sculpture. So I'm just making these slabs. They're about 1 inch thick, maybe 1.25 inches, you know, depends how big the portrait is. Okay, so here I'm going to start putting some of this clay onto the armature. So you see how you can just fold this right over, and because it's a nice thickness, it holds its shape well. Okay, now here, we don't want to put too much. Okay, so this cross, this butterfly key, if you look at it from the side, I'm going to push it in a bit more inwards towards the neck area. I don't want this butterfly key to be sticking out. So I'm just doing this generic shape right now to get the general mass of our model's head. Okay, you know, I slap, all right? If the clay is too soft, you don't want to slap. You want to push and push it towards itself, okay? And then here we go. Okay, so this really doesn't take much at all. If you don't have hand strength, I suggest that you cut the clay so that it's thinner. All right, here we go. All right, you want to pack the clay tightly against the pipe. All right, so that's the back of the head. This is the front. I'm going to try to form it. All right, so don't get obsessive if your shape is not perfect. It really doesn't matter. We're just starting this way, okay? So I've got this slab here. I'm going to cut another slab to help me lay down the general masses of the head. Now, what some of you may want to do is you cut a thinner slice, and then you can slice this up into quarters. All right, you see how it's not this perfect thing. We're just getting this generic clay, these generic clay masses cut out for now, okay? You have that, and then we can slice this in half as well. Okay, so we've got our little pile of clay masses now. All right, so when I look at our model, so why don't we get you facing that way? Yeah, okay. All right, so when we look at our model, we're going to be thinking about the overall shape of her face. So there's this movement, this V, and then, which is a sharper V, and then a taller A shape. All right, really generic. We're saying that the A is here, and then it gets cut off at the top. Our sharper V gets cut off at the bottom. All right, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to look at her from the front. I'm going to draw a generic center line. Okay. A generic center line, which is going to help me, help guide me in placing my general masses. So you can see, can you see it there? Yeah, you can see it there. All right, so this is a very generic center line. All right, this is actually crooked. Gotcha. All right, try to get it somewhat in the middle of the pole. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the back. So when you draw this center line, so you want to get the center line from the top here, okay? When you draw the center line, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a sense of orientation. Okay, now almost no person has a symmetrical face. You see how this is less narrower than this side, right? This side's wider. This is going to help you think about where you're going to place your clay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now that I've got this generic center line, I'm going to find the height of the eyes. So when it comes to the height of the eyes, I like to put the tool right in the middle of the central portion of the eyelids. Okay, so we're going to do this. And when I do this, I'm going to look at the top portion compared to the bottom portion. What are those heights? Okay, so it's a touch. The center of her eyes is around here, right? Actually, we're going to do this life size, so I'm going to do it at the actual height. So let's do this. All right, here. This is pretty easy. There we go. Straight across. Right there. Okay? So you got your generic height of your eyes. I want to put some clay on top now. Now with my tool, so if you have a straight edge like this, right? Thin, sharp, and rigid, that's very helpful. And you can also use a plumb line too. I don't really have my plumb line here, so I'm going to use this instead. We're going to use the clay cutter wire. So you can go straight across and look straight across from the top of the model's head to your sculpture. So I'm going to put a chunk of clay right here, and then I'm going to look across again and get that height of the head. All right, so it's about there. I'm going to pat this down so that it's right where it needs to be. Okay. All right, so we've got the generic, the placement of the top of the head, right? So that top of the head includes the hair. All right, so you have to be very careful. Hair can change height. So now we're going to draw where the height of the chin is. All right, so it's going to be, so be careful when you look underneath the chin of the model, it looks like it's all flesh. But when you really look, you'll see that underneath, there's a specific line right here. I'm going to touch you very gently, okay? Right here. You see a very slight line there, and that's the bottom of the chin, okay? Not everyone will have that line, but you have to be very careful to discern where the chin ends, okay? All right, so I'm going to do this. Okay. It's off by this much, and I'm going to recorrect, okay? So a lot of what goes on here is recorrecting yourself. If you are not aware of what you're doing because you're working too fast, right? What'll happen is you will have compound errors stacked on top of each other. You really want to recheck all of your measurements, recheck your shapes. I suggest you start from the big shapes first and then go into the smaller. So I'm going to do the general shape of Mia's head. So you remember, it's kind of a wider A at the top and a thinner one at the bottom. So I'm going to do this. Okay, you can see here. I'm adding this general shape of the chin, excuse me, the jawline, and then this is just a generic side of the head. All right, remember, this is all generic. We are not committing to anything right now. We're just trying to get a general idea for where things are. All right, so do not cover up your drawing right now. Keep it evident. Okay, so here I'm creating a kind of V shape, right? And knowing that I can add things later on as I need. Okay, so, all right, so this is kind of like a sight-sized sculpture, really. Not everybody has the benefit of being able to do this. So definitely, if you can, for a first sculpture project, try to work this way if you can. If the sculpture is smaller, have it closer up so that the size of your sculpture is the same size that you see the model. Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn this. Mia, can you just turn your, thank you. So here you go. You can see that general shape, right? Now, at a certain point, I'm going to have her really turn, and we're going to have to get that side view. So actually, let's do that. Please rotate. Rotate so that you're facing that way. Watch your profile. Okay, all right, here we go. So now we've got this movement here of the jawline. You see that mine is a touch. Actually, it's not bad. It's not that bad. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the general shape of her skull. Her skull actually ends here. Okay, so never be fooled by hair. So her skull ends here. And then we're going to think about where the deepest point of her skull is, which is around here. Okay? So you see how it's like flat in the back? this kind of flat skull is actually more like an Asian person's skull, like my skull. You can see. Okay, so I'm going to actually fill this out more. All right, here I'm going to use these thinner strips, and I'm going to lay these down so that you can get this general shape. All right, and I'm just putting it in the middle for now. You see, it's just in the middle, really generic. Okay, we're not getting finicky here. We're just trying to get the general mass. So for now, I'm just putting it all along the center line because the actual areas that create contour are much more complex. And we don't need to get into complexity right now. We just need to get general shapes. So I'm going to get the general shape of the nose. Now, when I look at this, I'm looking at the entire shape of the body. Oh. Okay, yeah. So now when I'm doing this, making this profile, right, I'm just looking at general shapes, okay? Very general shapes. We're looking at what is this angle here of this facet, right? So facet meaning one right ending right here because a plane change occurs at this point, then this right here. So from here to here, I'm trying to figure out what the angle is, okay? So the way you do that is you just hold your tool like this so you can really see what the angle is, and then recorrect it, correct yourself, and then recorrect. All right, be sure you're at eye level, that your eye level is at the level of the thing you're observing. All right, you don't want to be looking at it from a different angle. Okay, for people who have sculptures that are higher or lower than their model, you actually have to move your head so that your eye level is at the mid height of your sculpture and model. All right, so I'm just putting down this really generic stuff. I'm doing a very, very generic profile right now. Okay, so right now it's all in the center, but that's not where it's going to end up. We don't want to do everything in the center. You will see how weird that looks. Okay, so we're just going to put a little bit of information here. All right, and just so you can see, right, I want to be sure that you see this very generic thing, that the entire profile actually has to move forward. I want you to see that. Okay, so her chin, right, you can see here, actually protrudes further forward to allow for this angle, right, underneath the chin, of the flesh underneath her chin. So I just put really generic stuff so I could just see it, feel satisfied. But now I'm really going to move it forward, okay? Because you can see this is like this flat head. You can see there. It's like a flat head right now. Okay, so now I'm going to add to the real, I'm going to create real depth right now. So I know that the angle of the nose is correct. So I'm going to roll a little snake of clay. And I'm just going to add it here. Okay, so we don't have to complicate things by going all crazy. You're just going to simply put a piece of clay there that will help to push the nose, the profile forward. Okay, I see that the angle's a little off, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, okay. All right, it's not as extreme. All right, there we're going to get that. Now I'm going to push this part right here of the nose forward. Okay, so you see that just by working the profile, it's actually quite easy, right? Quite simple. Now I'm going to pull this up. Then you're going to get the bottom lip in here. Okay, and you keep flexible. Do not get finicky right now. This is not the time to get finicky. If you get finicky, you'll get locked mentally, and you won't be able to make the necessary changes that need to happen. All right, so we're going to get more clay down here. And then continue this profile. Okay, so let's see. What was this? Okay, so we're just doing this general thing. All right, I see things that aren't working. I'm just going to keep moving it forward. All right, and then here, I'm going to use the tool, the big tool, to form this shape here, this profile of the chin. All right, so we're just starting with that. Now we're going to go for, now that that's there, I'm going to start by putting in some generic, very, very generic forms of the nose moving into the forehead, okay? Once again, I'm just using a very generic snake of clay, a little roll of clay here. And being very well aware that all of this clay can get moved. All right, so we're gonna do this. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark where I see the top of her hairline, which is about here. And then the really easy way. So the thing is that in a beautiful and perfect world, the model doesn't move. The model doesn't move. Your sculpture is perfect, and you really didn't have to work for it, okay? But the reality is, the real reality is that no, our sculpture models are living human beings, and the whole point of sculpting, oh Jesus. Okay. So we've got our general profile, and then now I'm going to start, I started putting in where the hairline is. I moved this forward. I found that actually it was a little bit, wasn't really working right, so moving that forward so the scale is right. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is start to lay in the general mass of the cheekbone. All right, knowing that I still don't even know where it is yet, but I just see this general mass, so I'm gonna start putting some of that down, but I'm not gonna make it all poofy and huge. We're just putting it in so that you can see it from the side and also see it from the front. And we're just laying down a foundation right now. Next, we're gonna get this movement here of the temple. We're gonna put some clay there, and that's gonna help me think about, oh, there's a temple there, okay? All right, so we've got those movements. Now what I wanna do is give some shape to this. There's a general shape here. Okay. All right, so now the next thing is the orbit of the eye, okay? You'll see here that there's a lot going on around the eye, and historically, it's always a really hard spot to capture. So we're just gonna put a very generic piece of clay here. It's just gonna help to remind me, oh, this brow is around here. All right, we're gonna just go. So that's the generic setup, okay? Now I'm gonna get the very, very generic setup of this part of her cheek. I'm gonna lay this slug down like this, okay? You see how it moves this way? It's gonna move like that, all right? So this is all from the profile. Now I'm gonna turn this, you're gonna be shocked. Look at that. That looks really weird. Doesn't really look like her, but you know it's helping to remind you about what happens on the side. So let's see our model from the front, please. Okay, so you're gonna see that her nose is angled this way. Do you see that? There's actually an angle to this nose, okay? The line of her mouth slightly angles this way. Okay, so, and then even when I look at her eyes, there's a slight slant this way. So are you really keeping your head straight? Or can you tilt a little?
The eyebrows are off too.
Yeah, but can you tilt your head a little? How does that feel to you? Doesn't feel right to you?
It doesn't. It feels like I've dropped my shoulder.
Her head's calibrated to a certain angle. So,
Yeah.
so what you feel is straight is actually not straight.
This is not
Your
straight.
eyes are tilted this way. Yeah. So go ahead, tilt them the way you want to, because that's the way you are. Right?
God,
Yeah.
so
The
weird.
line of her eyes is actually tilted like this. You can see that.
This is.
That's less. A little bit less.
Yeah.
So
So
let's stop that.
this is what I would normally be.
Yeah, and you're tilted. So
And you're
yeah,
saying-
that's a little bit less than that. Yeah, that's it. This is actually straight. Okay.
That feels so straight. It feels like I've dropped my shoulder. This shoulder.
My guess is that you carry a bag on this side of your body. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're compensating.
That
You're
would make
pulling.
sense.
She's pulling her shoulder up, and then she angles like that. So this is
That makes sense.
Yep, so that's a very common thing. So our alignment is not always the same, and that is what makes us human. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at her again. I'm going to move some of this information, right? So you see this mass here. I'm going to move it over to the side a little bit, okay? And then I'm going to actually put another generic piece of clay here, right here. Okay. Now, when I look at this chin from above, I see it's way too wide, way, way too wide. So I'm just going to push it in a little bit, all right? We're going to get a general feel for her face, okay? Then, okay, what's the next thing? Then we're gonna go for this. So this is actually quite poofy, all right, my clay here. So instead of adding, I'm actually gonna hollow this out. I'm gonna do this because it's just too wide. All right, and we're trying to get it somewhat symmetrical, or at least somewhat closer to her actual structure. This got too wide, and it's just going to throw you off. So, yep. So you see I'm drawing, and then I'm cutting at the same time. Most of you beginners will want to draw first, stand back and check, and then cut. All right, so, okay, so we've got, all right, so I don't want to keep blocking the camera. Let's have you face towards me. All right, thank you. Okay, all right. So like I said, our model's eye line, center of her eyes, is actually tilted. So I want to take note of that now. Okay, these are some of our first observations. Yeah, it's ever so slight. All right, so now let's get some of the brow ridge in there. I'm going to, once again, you're almost like painting it. Wherever you see highlights, at least for now, because we're not getting focused yet, but these highlights are where the forms are protruding. So we're just going to do this. Now I see that I placed the clay a little bit to the left. You see how everything's to the left? So I'm going to actually smush stuff over now. So wherever I see this direction of her nose, I'm going to angle it, right? I'm putting the root, the top root of her nose near the center. It is actually a touch to the left, okay? And then you're going to see here, the highlight here. These are the outermost points of the profile. So this actually is okay. I'm going to put this here. Okay, over there. Now I'm going to place a little bit more here. I'm going to put a strip of clay across to represent where the mouth is. So I'm going to lay a little bit here just to fill in the spot. Lay a little bit in here too. And then I'm going to put a very thin piece just across like this. I'm going to break it off where I see the profile of the lips, and then I'm going to cross it right here too. Okay. And then I'm going to put the general shape of the bottom lips here. All right. Now we're going to just fill these holes up. So we're not going to fill everything. I find that when you start to, I personally find that when I start to smooth, I stop looking for things. When I have something that looks very unresolved, my mind is just working to try to get, to try to figure out where all those things are. Okay, so we're going to stop with that. All right, so that's enough for the general face. So I'm seeing this is looking a bit poofy. I'm going to cut it in a little bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to use this to smooth some of these planes that I see. But once again, we're just starting this. Okay, we are not saying this is finished. See this? I don't know how far out that goes. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do the general shape of the nose. Just put a little gob here. So basic, all right? A real basic gob of clay, all right? And I'm going to put a basic gob of clay here. Okay. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a little bulbous area here for the tip of the nose. All right, so what this is doing is it's giving me the opportunity to put in the general shapes and not commit. Okay, we're not committing yet. I want time to consider, to think about what's actually here, and to give myself the opportunity to see how our model is really made, as opposed to what I think it is like. All right, that's the difference with observational artwork. Okay, whether if it's plein air painting, you know, we're going out into the landscape, or you're sculpting a model like I am. The really amazing thing about observational art is that it causes the artist to question their perception of the world. Okay, now a thing I like to say to students is, are you actually awake? Okay, and I hate to say it, you get students even 8 years old. You think they're seeing the world fresh? A lot of them already have habits. Okay, and these habits prevent us from seeing the world as it really is. Okay, so I'm going to actually move this here. I just took a look at this and I see that the central part of the lips needs to move to the right. So I'm going to do that. Put it over here. Okay. All right, so here we go. Just moving her over. Okay, and now I'm going to start putting some of her chin. So if you look at her chin, you'll see that this side actually protrudes forward a little bit more. So we're going to put a general shape here for that. Now remember here, this piece of clay here, was actually the profile. So I'm going to make sure that it doesn't go beyond that. We're going to push that in, okay? All right, now I'm going to start putting some more flesh here so that we can actually put this in a touch. Okay. Yeah, so either way, the conversation about observational art, a lot of people say, oh, it's just copying, oh, you'd be shocked. You can think you're copying something and yet make yourself, all right? And that's a very common thing. People will think that, will be offended. They're like, oh my God, they made that person look like this. They made her look like a guy when she doesn't want to be a guy. All right, it's different if you want to be a guy, all right? But if you don't want to be a guy and the person made you look like a guy, well, don't you know that the artist was probably male, right? And made himself without realizing it. So that's a very common issue, is that we will make what we are most familiar with, and typically that's ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to start to put some more of this plane here. So there is some roundness here, but I'm going to make it into a two-plane section here up at the forehead. So I'm going to put some clay here and here so that we don't have so many patchy portions, okay? All right, so I'm going to make this into more of a plane here, more of a plane here. Okay, like that. And then like this. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to put some clay. I'm going to kind of try to round out this forehead area a little bit. Now to do that, you want to look from below. So from below, you can see, so I'm going to move this. I'm going to move it back up, but check out from below. You see this shape here? Whoops, whoops. Okay. All right, so this shape here of the forehead, right? We're going to be looking for that in our model. So you're going to be looking for this shape right here, okay? Yeah, like that, all right? So, okay, so I'm going to look from below and I'm going to see this shape of her head, okay? So, I'm actually putting movements that will follow her frontalis area. Okay, and then if this is the actual profile, so this actually does come out more. So this is very handy, all right? Now we had our hairline at this level here. Okay, now I'm going to just kind of fill this out a bit more. Okay. Now, the width of her head. Now, in some skulls, you're going to get the widest portion of the skull, widest points, right? They're going to be behind and above the ear. Now, the thing is that Mia does not have a skull like that. It actually gets narrower. Her face is the wider part, and it goes narrower in the back. So I'm not going to put a lot of clay back here because I know that when I look at her, okay? So there are times where you're going to want to look at your model and your sculpture from above and then also from below. You have to really alternate between the two. Otherwise, you can really lose track of what you're doing. See, what a lot of people do is because they're used to two-dimensional art, can much of the time just work from one side at a time. And when they do that, they're actually putting things all in the wrong spot, but not realizing it. It only works from the front, but everything else is like a mess, okay? So do this last check. On me is the shape of her forehead. And I'm looking at this, actually from here, when I'm at a 3/4 view, I can see the width of her forehead. So we're gonna just do this. Do this. Okay, and you see how very slowly we're starting to get a sense of the 3 dimensions. Okay. All right, so now that I've got that, I'm gonna start placing a little bit of her eyes. Now the thing is, we don't know how deep this is. So I'm just gonna do something very, very generic, okay? Now you see how she lifts her brows up? So let's move that up a little, okay? You see how this part of her eye here is relaxing? We're gonna let that fall. All right, this area right here. So we're gonna put a little bit here. Now I think this is quite chunky. It's too much clay, all right? So we're gonna just we're just gonna take a second to look at her from below. And I see that it is too chunky. So I'm gonna cut away here. All right, you can see from below what this is like. If this protrudes out, you'll see that it does not. So we're gonna get rid of that. Okay. All right, now I want to even this up a little bit because it's just a touch too hollow. So what I'm doing is I'm wiping my tool. So you can actually do this with the model to get an idea of the actual plane. So I'm going for this plane right here. All right, just that one little plane. So you're just gonna wipe it across like that, right here, okay? And then just very generically get some of these planes down. Now I'm gonna look at this shape from below. And I'm gonna see that this is all pinched inwards. So I'm going to get some more clay. And it's gonna come out like this. Okay, so this is all from below. You really have to see these things from below. Now I'm gonna look at this shape of her chin from below. And I can see that this has gotten too wide, so I'm going to pull this in. Now I'm going to do the same for the other side. This has got a hollow spot, but it also comes in here too. I'm gonna add some clay here to complete this form. Okay, like that. So this chin, look at it again. All right, got that shape. Now we have this part right here. So there's an angle change here. If you look at her, right? There's this angle change here, then the movement up. So I want to be sure to get her chin distinctly, then this flesh right here, okay, on this side of her face. So we're going to add some more here, and always rechecking. Okay. All right, and you can always use your tool to double check angles like this. Okay, so we're just generically placing this. I don't know what depth this is at. So do it generically, do not put a ton of detail. We are just trying to find out what this looks like from the front, and then we have to move the clay to figure out what the depth is. Okay, is this making sense? All right, 3D, my lovies, 3D. This is not 2D. This is not a bubble world where everything goes your way, okay? This is where you gotta really observe what is, and it takes time to understand that. And when you take that time, what happens is that this palace of information starts to grow in your mind, and you'll find if you can think in this way, you don't hammer anything down yet, you'll find that by practicing the skill of finding points in space, planes, and letting all those observations come together, you'll find that your mind, you can carry so much information and understand the most complex things. It's a very good skill for the mind to be able to hold information long enough. Oh, now it's tilted. The nose is tilted this way because Mia's eyes are tilted this way. So I'm going to tilt this. All right? Do you see that? You got to really watch what's in front of you. Okay, so because this is a living person, okay? So this skill of observing what is and being able to change and move with it, and yet still keep these points in space, right, in your mind, and don't let them get rigid, right? Oh, you'll be able to create all kinds of things, whether it be real or imagined, all right? You can create entire worlds. But if you can't hold the information long enough to understand this much complexity, well then, go do little baby drawings, okay? Yeah, I said it. Go do baby drawings. Because babies, they just act on instinct, you know? And that's totally fine. That's cool. There's a place for that. But when it comes to mental training, this is really where it's at. Okay. So now I'm going to start to shape this head a little bit more. All right. So here we've got our generic shape. Okay, and you can see that it's starting to form. Now I want to use a smaller tool to draw her eyes in. So I'm gonna draw her where her eyes are. Now, what's gonna happen is that, like, if you can do sight size, or you can do actual size. Actual size is actually easier, okay? Oh, one thing. The angle of the eyes from the inner to the out is shaped like a V. All right, so a line, if you connect from the inner eye to the out one, is going to be like a V. So be sure to do that now. Okay. Now notice how I'm drawing dark enough, deeply enough, so that you can see what I'm doing. Now, when you are really observing the model, you can't be on top of your sculpture like this the whole time. And you can't be like this on her all the time, right? You have to actually stand back to be able to see the entire composition, the entire face, and where the smaller sections fit, okay? So yes, you gotta step back. I'm seeing that this is like, so I'm using these straight lines. I've mentioned it and I'll mention it again. So these straight lines have a specific purpose. This organic human being and this organic clay, right, needs to have a contrasting straight linear structure to it. If you don't use this, you can very easily get lost. I know, all right, I am the queen of organic, curvy everything. What I found is that when you work with straight lines, you're dealing with point to point and the line that exists in between. When you're working with all curves, you are working with pi, all right, the circumference of a circle, which computers have not even yet figured out what that is, all right? So why go nuts with complex information. It takes very little to cut a line to be able to create, let's say, a circle. So if I did this, you already get the sense of a curved circle there, okay? All right, so start to draw the eye, then I start to draw the mouth. Couldn't help it. All right. Just trying to get a sense of scale right now. So her nose is a touch small. All right, I'm seeing it's also short. So when I look straight across, I'm seeing certain things. I'm gonna pull this down a touch. Okay, now the height of her eyes is too high in the sculpture. Let's punch it down a touch. So you can see that every time I put a different angle, it's a very clear and straight angle. And wherever these different sections intersect, it helps you to understand how long each section of the line is. That way, if you have to change anything, you can isolate exactly where the change needs to occur. All right, so this skill, which feels like a really big pain in the butt, right, is phenomenal, because once you're able to isolate where something changed in the most simple way possible, you can handle the most complex compositions, the most complex subjects, right? And yet still be able to isolate where you need to change something, where something needs to improve, if something's off, where, how, and then you can actually change it. Okay, so that's the big issue with a lot of creative people, is how do you change direction? When you've gone so far on the path to make something and you find out that something's wrong, well, how do you backtrack to find out where that happened, right? This is how I do it. I look at the big picture, then I go smaller, then smaller and smaller, until I identify exactly where the error occurred. And that's why we're dealing with one piece of information at a time. You notice how when I put down these planes, it's just one little line at a time. It's to simplify things so that I'll only focus on one piece of information at a time. Okay, so now I'm going to lower her nose because, hang on, let me see. So her mouth, I think I've given her my proportions to the mouth. This mouth needs to drop. Her lips are too tall, and thus her nose has become too long, because this seems okay, but this seems all too tall. So let's see. So I'm gonna drop it all. All right, so what do you do when you gotta change things? All right, so here I'm gonna do it. All right, so first figure out where your new landmarks will be. This level here. This needs to move down. Double check the height of your sculpture compared to the model. Okay, looks okay-ish. All right, now we're gonna go for eyebrows. You can also go for draw eyebrows in as well. That helps to isolate where things are. Okay, do this. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, this nose, let's see. Yeah, it's like totally off. All right, this is totally off. So what I'm gonna do, you can do different things. You can slice this out and move it down. This is so generic. I'm just gonna smush it down and then move it down like that. So it may push out, but I'll deal with that later. This clay is soft enough that I can do what I just did. We're gonna do this, and then I may have to just push it back into the sculpture. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so this clay, yeah, definitely is soft enough that I can do this. If it's too hard, if you've worked a lot, you may want to slice this out and then slide it down, or you just got to cancel it and start over again. There's no big deal in doing that either. No harm done. Okay, checking the proportions again. Yeah. Still think it needs to move down a touch. Okay, all right, there we go. That was the easy way of doing things. All right, now what I see here, this nose is too short, okay? Where it begins is actually around here. All right, so if you see this little line here, right? Every model has different landmarks on their face, okay? So here we've got a little skin line right there, so I'm gonna use that as my base, top base of the nose. All right, now you can really see this is way too short. You see that? Okay, it's ridiculous. So I'm gonna move this nose down. Now, I think that here is okay. It's generic enough, right? But I wanna move this root of the nose down. So I'm gonna slice right here. Okay, you can see here. And then I'm gonna move it down. Okay, because remember that this space was actually not that bad. All right, so we're going to move it down tentatively. Now, since it's hard to tell what's what, I'm going to put a little bit of clay here, so just to be able to tell what this length of that nose is. Okay. All right, I think it's okay. Now, when it comes to these wings of the nose, the ala, right? That actually needs to move down anyway. So don't be fooled. This is just the top part of the nostril, just that top part. Now we got to put clay to go down more to make it the proper length of the nose. So we're going to do this. And that looks a lot better. Okay. All right, so I'm going to fill this in. You can see here, this gets filled in. It's kind of like crazy architecture now. I'm gonna put that in there. All right. Okay, so now that this is done, I'm going to start making real measurements, and I'll get back to you in a second. Okay, so I'm going to just put some clay down for the eyes. Now that this is more or less okay proportion-wise. So I'm gonna leave these gaps here for now, just to let things, make it so that things can get moved a bit. Actually, you know what, come to think about it, it's kind of a visual, it actually visually helps to get rid of that. So I'll just get rid of this real quick. I'm gonna draw this line here. So you see there's a line here, okay? We're gonna draw that in. Okay. Draw this in. You see this line could come in a little bit more. So it's a little deep here, so I'm gonna stick some clay in here. All right, so remember, when you apply the clay, you're gonna be thinking about applying the clay so that it's less than the actual volume you want. All right, just for now while we're setting things up. Okay, so it's gonna be less than. All right. All right. Now at a certain point, I'm gonna be taking measurements of Mia. I'm gonna be taking measurements of the width of her nose, the length of it, the width of her zygomatic arch, everything. So I'll be using that to get all of my correct proportions. And we look, you know, width of the eyes, la 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 la. Okay, so I'm gonna do real generic little roll of clay for the eyelid, okay? Now, I still don't know where this eye is, so I'm just putting this in here tentatively. Okay, very, very tentatively. Okay. I just want to put this in so that I get a sense of what depth is. Okay, so we're just doing like that. It's just very generic. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at her from this side. So let's get the side view of you, Mia. Okay, so now we've got side view. Okay. All right, so the profile has changed since I've moved it. Okay, so we're gonna move this out. Okay, so when I put in her eyes, now you can see here, you can see right there, that's where her eyelid is. Now you're gonna see that it's not angled enough. Okay, and it also doesn't come out enough, but you'll also see that this profile has been lost again. So in order to redo this, I want you to turn more this way, Mia, to your right, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's see. All right, so in order to get this profile again, I'm gonna have to draw in where I see these angle changes. So I see this, then this moves out. Ooh, so this is not, so the line I have here is not coinciding with this profile. So I want to double check everything before I start going forward. All right, so I'm going to look to see where that line is. The line that I drew before at the base of the nose is up higher. So what the heck did I do wrong? I also see that it's too low. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to raise it up, raise this line up. And it's highly possible that it will be in the right spot anyway. So I'm going to raise that up. I'm going to make the line long enough so that I can see it from the side. I'm going to continue my cut here to get that profile. And then I'm going to use my tool to draw in these angles once again. All right, you want a sharp tool for this. All right, so you're going to draw it and then you're going to check it. Then you're going to stand back, check again, and then here you can see I've found, all right, so you can see there and there's this little section, there's a section here, right? So now I've just checked it. This is the correct inclination of the nose, all right? Okay, so we've got that. So there's a little bit of movement in the nose, so I'm gonna do this. That's gonna close up that area there. Okay. All right, so now that I've got this profile a little bit better, you can see that the lip needs to come out. I'll get to that soon. But right now, I just want to look at this section right here. So my eye is going to go around the head, up the chin, and then here. I'm going to focus here, right? So the eye does this, then it goes here. That way, you're thinking about the entire thing and the details that fit in that space within the context of the whole. All right, so what I'm seeing is that her eyelids need to come out more. So I'm going to add more clay here. Now, when you look at the model, you can actually see where the outermost point is. So you're going to have your eye where the outermost point is. That creates the profile of her eyelid. And then you're going to move around and find where that is. Okay, So it's actually closer to the outermost, to this part right here. So around here is where you're going to get the outermost point of that eyelid, okay? Yeah. So it's outside of the iris, the colored part of the eye. Right, so I've put some clay here. I've marked here around how wide out that this outermost point of the eyelid is. Put that there. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing a height issue. All right, so this needs to get lifted up a little bit higher, and then right there. Okay, so now that I have that, you see, so there's a line here. There's a line. Okay, so right here. So right here, there's a line, okay, that marks the front plane of her bottom lid. All right, the part that's underneath, that's like from here to here, right? This is around where the orbit of the eye is. So trying to get this plane right here, okay, from the side. So you can see like that, all right? So now we're gonna get where that outermost point is, okay? And then I'm gonna place some clay there. Okay, and then, so you can see that. All right there. So, so that's gonna help you with the depth of the eyes. You're gonna get it from the outer lid here, okay? Then, when you have this, right, this point here, you're gonna face toward me, Mia. I'm gonna look from below to see the shape of the actual eyelid from below. And this is where you can use your smaller tool to draw out that shape. Okay, and then it's from here that you can actually really get the shape of Mia's eyelid. All right, so I'm going to take this out. You can see this shape here from underneath, okay? And then you see the shape of Mia's eyelid from beneath. Okay, so it's very important that you're always looking at things that you're aware of, whether if your eyes are down, like the plane of your eyes is here, or if it's here, or if it's here, right? So you have to be very careful. So show you from the side. So your plane of your eyes is going to be like this, or like this, right? Or like this. And then when you're with the model, you have to be aware of from what perspective you're looking at the model, right? So that everything matches up. It's all about perception. Okay, so this should be good for blocking in the facial features. I want to generically finish off the shape of her skull, okay? So now I want to get this shape of Mia's jawline, okay? So in order to do that, once again, for the really difficult areas that that all look pretty much flat and the same, right, value-wise, you want to look from below. So from below, I can see that there's a plane change here. Okay, plane change here. I'm just going to kind of draw out where I see these various masses, these general forms. So here I see a depression, okay? So I'm gonna look from below and try to, I'm gonna gouge this out a bit, okay? Gouge it out a little. This is exaggerated, okay? Now I'm gonna look from above. And this gives me a more specific kind of viewpoint, okay? So from above, you can see some of these angles better. So you see how I'm kind of wiping the clay across? I'm creating a plane change there. Okay, and then now we're going to go to this area where the mastoid process is. Remember that? Behind the ear, it's the hard lump. Okay, so I'm going to, well, half the time it's like just trying to figure out what position you can look at. So I'd say like maybe from here, you can see the angle of her jawline going into her neck. Okay, so over here, you're gonna see this angle change and then the neck, right? And then if you go around some more, you'll see more angle changes occurring. So you really wanna isolate, once again, where you're observing, and then move on from there. So we've got this movement here. Okay. And I look from above. I find that the above view really helps a lot. So we're gonna do this. Okay. Let's get some of this neck. There's a sternocleidomastoidus that descends here. So let's do a little bit of clay here, just to remember that it exists. Okay. And we can eventually fill that in as well. All right, so now her head, right? What is the outermost point of her skull? I'm gonna look once again from below, and be sure that you're really looking at the side view, okay? All right, here we go. So you can really see from below what this contour line is like, okay? All right, let's see. Okay. And you see I'm creating another facet. There's like a facet that changes this direction, right? So you're thinking here, then here, okay? If you're to look at it from above, all right? All right, now this is gonna move in like that, okay? So now what you can do is even just do this and get that general plane. Okay, you see how we're not going crazy here. We're just trying to get general planes. All right, I'm trying to give you a little bit more time on this project so that you can really try to observe this properly. Okay. All right. Okay, so now when it comes to where the ear is, we're gonna move some of this out. All right, so there's the jaw, the mandible, right? And then there's the mastoid process back here. You're gonna hollow this out. Okay, I'm gonna turn this. You can see. Okay. So this plane is gonna go out like this, okay? This angle. And it's gonna come in. And then somewhere around here, you're gonna get the ear. Now, the way to do the ear is very simple. You're gonna check out the profile, check out the depth of the head. Now I'm thinking depth of my head, this head here. Looks like it could be a bit shallow, a little bit, still too much like that. So it also depends on the model's hair. Okay, so but we'll just go here. Remember, this is all an approximation for now. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where this outermost point is. It is above and behind the ear. okay, above the eye of the level of the eyes. Now some people, it could be like right over the ear. You get a lot of different kinds of people, okay? So don't be hypnotized by thinking it's always there. Really check for it, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in where this ear is. So this, okay, you can see I drew an angled line for where the ear is, okay? And then I'm going to draw the height of the ear. We're just going straight across. That way your mind will continually think of heights, right? Okay, I think it's around here. Okay, so this is about the height and the width of the ear when you look at it from the side. All right, so this may be too difficult, right, to discern. So what I'm gonna do, all right, is I'm gonna draw the hairline, okay? You can also draw where the eyebrows are too. You do a full out drawing. I'm just gonna do a crazy wonky ass drawing right now, all right? Just to help you see, okay? It's not necessarily correct. Now what you can do is you can actually draw where the hairline is, and once again, I suggest you go for very basic straight lines, okay? That way you don't get too, crazy about things. And then this will help you see, okay, this is where the thing is. You can also draw back here as well, where you see the hairline continues. All right. Last thing. Let's just get the general head, the neck in there. All right, I'm just going to get very, very generic here. All right, once again, and let's get some of this chin, just so that I can remember that it goes back like that. Okay, see that? Okay, all right, so this is the block in of the head, and we will continue next week. You see there, okay, so what I want is finding the reference points, okay? I didn't really go into that this time. Now it's just been about planes and placement, right? But I want you to use X's, your infamous X's, to double check where the widest point is of your model's head, okay? You're going to check where the top root of the nose is, right? You're going to be checking where the zygomatic process is. Now we'll get the tape on the model too next time so that you can see that. But for right now, I just want to give you a generic overview. But you're supposed to be counterbalancing this, finding those, with the global planes and placement of the head. So there you go. Mia, let's just have you turn your head towards them. Yep. Let's see. Okay. Oops. There you go. Okay. So there's our Mia portrait. All right. Thank you.